Hello, and welcome to the Disability Myth. My name is Dominic, and I live with a fatal disease called spinal muscular atrophy. Together, my amazing caretaker, co-host, and best friend, Uriel, and I plan to debunk misconceptions, share our personal experiences, and shatter your expectations. But we're not stopping there. We're bringing in experts, thought leaders, and everyday people who are smashing through societal barriers, paving the way for a more inclusive world. Whether you're tuning in to learn, empathize, or simply to be entertained, the show promises to be an eye-opening experience that transcends boundaries. Because when it comes down to it, what makes us different is what makes us extraordinary. Well, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of the Disability Myth.
With
Uriel,
and
Dominic, mixing up the intro, trying to
yeah,
play tricks on me, I see.
nah.
I am, of course, your handsome and humble host, Dominic Trevathan. Oh, yeah, and Hammy.
Yeah, you forgot
Almost
Hammy.
forgot, almost.
Almost.
You'd think one of these days I'd have it down by now, but you know. All right, and then alongside me, as always, the equally
Equally.
handsome, humble
And Hammy,
Hammy.
there we go.
Uriel.
Yeah. Hi.
How you doing today, man?
Pretty good. Uh, pretty good. We have a special guest today by
We
the
do.
name of Sophia.
Lee-Park.
Yeah. So it's really
So
exciting.
yeah, we're super hyped to have you on the show, Sophia. Um, I'll just kind of give a little context. Sophia and I first met, I believe, at the Junior Wheelchair Sports Camp, which at this point is just like a reoccurring theme in my podcast guests. I feel like half of my guests are just my friends from sports camp, which is all good.
Which is beautiful. It's a little poetic, reach out to each other.
Exactly.
Hey,
Speaking of poetic, sports camp is held at UCSB every year, and my
um,
friend Sophia here graduated from UCSB with her degree in sociology and is now a current student at USC. And that's my little intro for Sophia. I'll let her kind of talk a little bit more about herself. So, yeah, Sophia, welcome onto the show.
Hi, thank you, Dominic, so much for having me. My name is Sophia. I'm a recent, as Dominic just said, a UCSB graduate. And I'm originally from the Santa Barbara area. And Now I'm a graduate student at USC. So, we're recording this, or I am, in my apartment and in LA. So, but great to be here and excited to talk with you today.
Heck yeah. How do you like living in LA? I lived there for a couple years and it's a little hectic.
So for people not from the area, I would say that like me, that are, just getting used to the life. It's definitely a more of a nice place to visit, I would say, than live. This and
Unless you're like
also,
in Beverly Hills
as
or
disabled
something.
people, being in a busy city, I think, is a lot. So it's a lot of, transit and a lot of people, but it I guess it was a good like learning experience for me to be here because now, coming from Santa Barbara, a very small rural town, to here is definitely quite the change.
I feel
And
you.
so you know that too. So
Yeah.
yeah, but it's good.
It's like it it's just one of those experiences. I mean, as a person with a disability, especially going from, where I live in Santina's Valley, like Solvang, um, it's it's quiet and everybody knows everybody here. And then you move to LA and you don't know anybody and
Mm-mm.
don't even get me started about the cracks in the sidewalk.
Oh dear. Um, no, even before I was at USC, I had a few friends, including you at UCLA, and they were telling me that yeah, inaccessibility in LA, it has a different um meaning, right? Like
Yeah.
every city does. So yeah, I definitely feel that, and definitely the whole like just being in a wheelchair and trying to get around is
Yep.
quite a lot. I forgot to mention that I have like multiple disabilities. So I have like physical disabilities, so cerebral palsy, and then I'm also autistic as well. And so if anyone wants a mentor for that reason, just reach out to me. But in terms of like just getting around the city, and I think not many people um they really know like when you transition to college, like how um just getting used to your physical environment is quite a feat within itself. So
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, as a person living with a physical disability, it's tough enough. And then you add on the neurodivergent layer, and that's gotta add a whole nother
mhm.
complexity to it, I imagine.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
noise, the people, you know. Oh
Yeah, it's gotta
gosh.
be a lot.
When you were in UCLA, you were like in the heart of it, right? You were what was the
Yeah,
street? You
I
were
was in the trenches.
no.
No,
It's
I lived on campus. There was a couple of dorm rooms or dormitories
I think
that
I'm
I lived in.
mistaking it with the UCLA road
What's the UCLA road?
on the way there when we passed by all the houses and
Oh, I
whatnot.
mean like by the frats and stuff and
Yeah.
sororities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget. The road that runs through campus is Charles E. Young
Yeah.
Drive,
Yeah.
but that's different. Anyways, um, so today we're very excited to talk about a quite philosophical topic, um, and that is advocacy.
Oh yeah.
We kind of went back and forth on this topic for quite a while, me and Uriel.
We discuss it, I'd say almost bi-weekly almost.
Yeah,
Well, it started no, not a few weeks. It started maybe 2 months ago
yeah,
because I just I'm your caretaker, and then we spend a lot of time together. So we just start talking about
everything we love and everything we hate.
yeah, whether it be like communication, politics, news, stuff, hobbies. And then we started talking about advocacy. And then the more we talked about it, it just slowly became a little bit more complex. And we're like, oh man.
Exactly.
Right.
And we've been wanting to make this episode for quite a while,
Yeah.
and we weren't sure who we wanted to bring on as a guest to discuss with us. And I remembered Sophia being my friend from camp, and she's a big advocate for those living with disabilities across the spectrum. And we just kind of reached out to her, and she was so kind as to accept our invitation. And yeah, here we are. So we're super excited to have you on once again, Sophia. Thank you for being so kind as to accept this invitation. And yeah, we're really excited to jump into that advocacy talk with you. But first, we got to, of course, do our world famous icebreaker questions. And we decided to mix them up for this episode
Oh yeah.
specifically. We cooked up a couple new ones. So with that being said, we'll start off with a very big hitter in what's your favorite sandwich and why? I'm saying like if you go to Subway, but someplace
Maybe.
better than Subway, maybe like I
Hmm.
don't know, like a Jersey Mike's, literally anywhere but Subway actually,
Who are you
where you
limiting
can
to chains?
where you can build your own sandwich. You can put any toppings, any bread, whatever you want. I don't know, is toppings the right word? Isn't that like a pizza term actually? What do you put on a
I
sandwich?
think it's toppings.
Toppings.
Yeah.
Okay.
Toppers. I don't know.
So what's your favorite type of sandwich, Sophia? Don't mind.
Okay, I would say that in Subway, actually, they don't have this anymore, which is really sad. My mom and I, we used to get like the pastrami sandwich. Santa Barbara's big on like deli sandwiches, right?
Hmm.
So I would say that with like banana peppers, I'll eat them.
Those are
Um,
good.
and yeah, and probably just like um, I remember because um, Santa Barbara is like big on um, like having your food at the beach, so we would do that, and that's like a very common like sandwich. But yeah, I think hot pastrami is probably my go-to
Hot
sandwich.
pastrami.
Dude, I'm hungry. I haven't had a hot pastrami in a hot second.
He just told me he hasn't eaten anything since
Like
like
5
yesterday.
p.m. Oh no, they put me on blast. Ah,
You got
hey,
me talking about food, so
hey,
now I'm
okay.
hungry, or now
I
you're
can hold
hungry.
off a little bit.
Um, okay.
All right. So a nice pastrami sandwich. I dig it. I respect it. I respect the hustle.
Respect.
Um, Next icebreaker question. Dogs or cats? Which do you prefer?
Personally, I think so. I had a dog. He actually lived for like 14 years. And his name was Buddy. So like
Nice.
I had a dog, like a childhood pet. And he was great. I think that dogs are great, especially, one day, um, if I want a, companion or even like a service dog. I know they're hard to get, but I've been naturally thinking about that for quite some time. But I actually, my twin sister, and my dad are allergic to cats. But if I had it my way, and I could just have any aura, I think it'd be cats. So
Oh
That's
man.
we're starting off to a terrible start with the
What do you mean? I
dog
love
cat
cats.
question. I'm
They're
just
both
kidding.
awesome. And now my heart broken because I have a cat that lives on the property where I live, and like every time I see it,
Yeah.
I give it so many pets and whatnot, but I have to immediately wash and cleanse myself and pop a
right.
Benadryl. And it's terrible. I have to, oh dude, I can't keep taking these Benadryls, man. Like I'll pay top dollar for it.
You bring up a good point, which is in LA, there's a lot of stray cats, just like
Oh yeah.
where I live. And there was actually like anyway, there's like two, and yeah, so
Yeah,
see a
there's
lot
a
of just cats walking around sometimes.
yeah,
Um
there is a stray
yeah.
cat that always used to roam around. I think it was Powell Library at UCLA, and it was like the library, Powell Library cat. It would just roam around, and all the students would walk by, and if like you got so lucky as to see it when you're walking by the library, it was a good day.
Yeah, but like right now it's the winter, so I could pet the cat all I want. But now it's starting to heat up, so now I have to actively look for ticks now. And I'm
Oh,
like, oh shoot. So
Oh dear.
I have to
Yeah.
find a way to catch the little guy and take it to a vet to get like situated for spring or summer
yeah.
before
Yeah,
tick
that
season.
too. Yeah. That's another thing. Like you don't have to walk the cat, but you still have to like take care of the
Oh
cat.
yeah, well, because I
So
mean, I still want to cuddle it, but I'm not trying to get ticks and fleas on me, right?
That is
I'm already popping bennies for it.
that's certainly suboptimal.
Yeah, I mean, taking a Benadryl every time I cuddle it, that's also
we
suboptimal. I
we
tell you, it's like,
sacrifice
yeah.
for the cat. Yeah.
Why
Yeah,
Benadryl? Because it's the cheapest.
my family is the same way. Like even though they're allergic, I think they still like cats, but yeah. But yeah, and then um yeah, I don't know. I'll have to see about the future, but right now, LA, as you know, doesn't really allow for pets, so
Yeah,
we'll
it's
see.
not great.
Mhm.
All right
I
then.
like dogs, but I'm mixed on puppies.
What do you mean mixed on puppies? What do you got against puppies?
High
What did
energy,
puppies do to you?
high energy, much chaos, very overstimulating. Eat everything, it's like, oh
I mean,
man.
I could say the same for you. Yes, for being
Hey.
real.
But I like when a dog matures and they reach like that middle age period and they
Mhm.
mellow out. Oh, best thing ever. Yeah, they're the best, you
I
know?
think I like puppies from afar. Same with any small animal that needs a lot of attention. So,
Wow. Last icebreaker. What's the best piece of advice that you've ever been given?
ooh, that's a hard one. Um, I would say, I mean, as you know, like I've had to make it this far with a lot of really good advice, right? And so I think one of like the overarching, I guess, like pieces of wisdom I've gotten is like you have to be um deliberate about like what you commit to in terms of like your time and your energy and because I feel like we'll talk about this later, but the like we all have um things that we want to accomplish, right? And but you'll get there, but do you really want to invest your time into this? And I think one of the things I've realized is you have to be intentional about those like commitments um and also like where you want to be, where you want to go. I think related to that, it's like you can't obviously do everything, or there are limitations, but once you realize like that there's a world that could be better, or what you envision could be better, I think that's what motivates me. So, and we could talk about that, down the road, but thinking about just my life and how yeah, it's really about the choices and the decisions that I was able to make that have really like drove, what I wanted to do and where I am now. And yeah, because there's so much pressure on us um to conform and also just not acknowledge all the energy it takes to just exist. And so I would say that that's yeah, like probably like at the core of my life, even like right now, is to be forward facing and intentional about things.
That's a very, very good piece of advice.
Oh yeah.
Um, Being deliberate with the time you spend specifically. That's huge. I don't think a lot of people realize like a lot of people think they have all the time in the world, but you only do if you spend it wisely, right?
Mhm.
And speaking of that, and we know that, well, we all kind of do this to an extent. We spend a lot of our time doing advocacy, right? Raising awareness for a multitude of issues, specifically regarding disability. And it it's tricky because when you're talking about advocacy, I think it oftentimes, and actually Uriel brought this point up to me originally,
Mhm.
it gets pigeonholed with
Mhm.
mass movements,
Yeah.
with governmental issues.
Mhm.
Um, And you brought up this idea to me, specifically, Sophia, that this myth that you have to be, quote unquote, on the front lines to be an advocate.
Mhm.
Um, and that's like a pretty large misconception, I think. When you look up the definition of an advocate, you do a quick Google search, the answer it gives you is that an advocate is a person who publicly supports or recommends a particular cause or policy. But when we talked last time about this specific episode and planning for it,
Mhm.
I think the main takeaway was that advocacy is a lot more complicated than that,
Mhm.
and we can get a lot more out of it. So I'll kind of start the little discussion off with this question. Why do you think that myth is so popular? Why do you think people believe that misconception that you have to be on the front lines to be
Mhm.
an advocate?
Well, I think that I was thinking about your question. After we had that whole discussion and thinking about how because of technology and because of the innovation of our time and also just thinking about social media, right? The amount of things, right, that you're exposed to, and also how it's a lot easier, right, to express your beliefs, right, your passions, your what you believe in. And so I think that more than ever before, advocacy is meaningful to people, right? Invisible, right? Which um I think that expressing your attitudes, as I just said, has become more easier with, all of what comes with just today's world. And so thinking about how um people still in my yeah, again, this is all from my point of view, but I think people, as you said, still hold a very um, able-bodied kind of centric view or non-disabled centric view of what advocacy is and what it looks like. What I mean by that is, as you said, what does it actually mean? To be, not only an advocate for yourself, but also at the front lines of a movement, right? And something, um, and so we're thinking about, right, I'm just thinking about current events, right? And trying to be relevant, right? Which is, um, obviously with everything going on in the world, right? We end with the pandemic still kind of impending on us. There is this, as I said, like more visibility about world issues and the nation, right? And policy. And but I feel like so for example with like racial injustice and violence or like women's reproductive rights, for example, that or Black Lives Matter, right? That um sometimes, right, the only way that we see these protests or this advocacy kind of on TV or as I said, like what we're exposed to is, on the news typically. If that's what you're exposed to, that's often how we view what advocacy is, right, or what it looks like. And so I think I would like to bring up that while this was all going on and still is, and even, as I said, like amid the pandemic, disabled people, including us, right, as we speak, like online are also part of not only these movements, right, that are going on, existing, but also movements of our own, which means, thinking about how, just to name a few, right, the um, failing healthcare system that we have, right, the inequities of that healthcare system, homelessness, we could talk about all these, right, different issues and how, a lot of advocates that I've met, they're just your everyday scholar, right? That is in higher education and is not. And so I think that this misconception has been perpetuated, um, as I said, because of just the normative, um, kind of accepted notions of what advocacy looks like and what real change. So in my experience throughout COVID, and even now, um, like disabled people, as I said, are in all of these efforts and are. So, if we're talking about, white ableist supremacy and the mass disabling wars that are going on right now, and other, world events, let alone where I come from, which is advocating for increased accessibility and inclusivity in higher education. We, I think a lot of people they assume that, as you said, you have to physically like be there or be doing something, actively doing something um, to be participating in these right, advocacy efforts. And so I think that's why, right, a lot of um, or like this myth continues to exist. Um, but yeah, and it's definitely with social media and everything definitely gained um, more visibility.
Yeah, no, that was a great, really well-spoken answer. It's a lot to unpack for sure.
Because I think when we first started discussing it, we had a very, at first we had a very narrow-minded and stereotypical view of advocacy, and we hadn't really fought much about other forms of advocacy and their validity.
Yeah. Well, and it's like you were saying, there's so many other layers. Like you had mentioned, Black Lives Matter. There's a lot of civil rights issues surrounding race, racial inequality. Um, uh, the list kind of goes on and on. And then when you throw in disability as an identity into that kind of complex equation, I think the word that you had mentioned when we talked previously was, or the phrase you mentioned was, how do we negotiate our identity as a person with a disability
Mhm.
among all these other kind of identities, you know? So,
And I would like to, talk about that, which is that one, a lot of, disability justice scholars, which, I mean, the disability justice movement, it's another like wave of the, like main disability rights movement, right? But um, first, I would like to speak to your first point, which is they, a lot of scholars are saying, well, you don't necessarily have to be like physically present. You could be in bed, right? Or um, do art, right? Or something from your home and still be an advocate for something greater, right?
kind of like us. Yeah.
And
Right.
the other point, which is what you just mentioned, right? Which is um, I think that yeah, like disability is in every community, especially, those most impacted by these very issues, right, or problems. So I think that, um, people who are even those at the front line. I think sometimes disabled people's experiences are not only erased, but they're kind of, um,
Pushed to the side.
overlooked in general. Yes.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, why, um, yeah, there's a lot of gray area, right, with how advocacy could operate. And yeah, so definitely.
Okay. So one of the topics that got brought up in our prior discussion too is not only negotiating our identity as a person with a disability amongst other identities, but deciding for ourselves how do we educate people on our needs as an advocate and as a person with a disability. Can you touch a
Mhm.
little on that?
Yeah, so I think, like I was saying, I think advocacy, it fuels, right, and it drives like what we envision for a better society. And not only that, but um, some folks, right, they have no choice but to advocate for themselves, right, at a very young age. Because we live, as I said, in a very ableist society where that is able-bodied people and non-disabled people, they dominate the world. So of course that means, as you said, it's often an afterthought, or we have to be the ones to advocate for ourselves and to think, right, that this is just the way that it has always been, right? And not only that, but as you just mentioned, which is it takes a lot for um individuals, as you know, in our community, and all over, right, the world, to be disabled. What do I mean by that? Well, not everybody can be as openly, um, as open, right, about their disability identity, right, for one reason or another. Whether that's, related to other identities that they have, and such as, them being queer or being undocumented. There are so many reasons why certain people of marginalized groups already that are disabled, right, are not able to claim that identity in a proud way, right? And in education, it even goes further than that, which is you have to be willing and able to um, say that you have these needs and have this disability so that you can actually get support in the system, right? And that's how the system has worked. So I think thinking about how, like you said, how we have to negotiate those identities in a certain context, right? In a certain environment. I think that in and of itself, and I've learned a lot from, being on Zoom, to say the least, people not seeing me physically, in person until I meet them. And then it's also, the idea, right, that attitudinal barriers, actually carry more weight, right, in our society, which, is pretty clear, right, that there is, for good reason, a lot of stigma surrounding not just disability, but I think a lot of marginalized communities already are targeted for multiple things and multiple reasons. So to put or to have another identity imposed or given to you that could make you even more vulnerable to stigma, I think is why, a lot of people um have or struggle to like be an advocate like you and me, where we're very visible and very open, right, about what our disabilities are, right, how they impact us on a day-to-day basis. And related to that, I think that, you know, if you don't come out, right, that's the other thing. If you're not open about these things, um, or you have to be because of one reason or another, right? Either to receive some service in school or whatever the case might be. Um, it's never, it comes with a lot of like personal implications for you as an individual. And then also, what we'll talk about later, but the idea, right, that um there is a lot that comes with taking on the role of an advocate and or being at the front lines. So um how do we make that more accessible? And given that not many of our like fellow disabled folks can be as open, right, about it. And I feel like if I wasn't as open, that's the other thing. I don't think I would be right where I am today, or people would
Yeah.
listen to me in the way that they have. So,
Yeah. No, definitely. Um, being an advocate too, I think, on this note is it's a process of acceptance, like you said. A lot of people have to quote unquote come out as a person with a disability. And essentially by that I mean accepting their disability
mhm,
as a part of their lives. A lot of people, believe it or not, have a hard time doing that, including myself. You know,
mhm,
I'm fortunate in the sense that when I was a kid, my parents just kind of drilled into me. I have to advocate for myself.
mhm.
I heard that
Me
over and
too.
over growing up. I'm sure you did
Yeah.
too.
No,
Yep.
yeah, I get that. I mean, it's funny, and I would like to emphasize your point, which is sometimes we don't want to be resilient, right? And we don't want to be advocates. There's times where because of obviously because of interlocking oppression, you have multiple things that you want to advocate for, right? And racism, as we were talking about earlier, sexism and all that. And so you would imagine, right, that if you're given all these opportunities, right, that you would, right, want to do that. But often, like, even now, um, at the university level, you realize that that comes with a lot of like personal, as I said, like burnout and stuff like that. So it even though maybe our loved ones or our mentors want us to be advocates, um, and we are in that position, it's a lot, right, to
Hmm.
continue doing that. Right?
Yeah.
So I agree.
Yeah. I was just talking to a friend about this last night. He's like, I noticed you don't really cuss that much on your podcast. And I'm like, well, you know, there's people, I think at least, that kind of pay attention to what I say,
Yeah.
including, younger people like kids and whatnot. And, I've always thought since we started this podcast that those people are going to watch and I need to be a good role model for them. And that's a whole nother thing I've had to negotiate along this process of becoming an advocate, right? Not that I wasn't before I started the
Mhm.
podcast,
Oh yeah.
but starting this podcast, I had to negotiate and accept that I wanted to be an advocate for not only myself, but for other people.
Mhm.
And that's a lot of responsibility to bear.
It is. Yeah, and I would like to say, it's a big, sometimes you can acquire this identity, right? And at any time, which I don't think I mentioned, but the idea, right, that it does take a long time for some people, understandably so, right, to come to face and confront this new reality in the way that their life is. But I think it's not until you're able to um, envision a better um, future for yourself and for other people, and you're able to have that support network of people, right, friends, family, mentors, that you're able to realize like I I can live a full life, and but again that within that that can take a whole lifetime. Yeah, so but I'm very glad that we have art and we have different media and ways of you know communicating what we need, and not only what we need but why it's why our like assets are as a community are so important to discuss, which I think is related to your next question, um, which is how do we educate people on what we need, or
Right.
how do we advocate, right, in the appropriate way. And I think first I would like to preface this by saying that everybody is an advocate um, in their own right, whether they um, are at the front lines or not. So whether you're living every day, you're just getting through the day, that in it of itself, for many, and this is from my disability justice background, but that in and of itself is a resistance, right, to exist, um, is to just live another day, right. I think the other part is to um do this effectively. We have to be proactive and lead with compassion and humility rather than anger, hostility, and accusation. To be
Yeah.
accusatory, right? I think a lot of times, like at the university level, because I was at the UC, you were as well, and then we're at different universities, right? So we all know, right, that the way that universities were built were not built for us, right? And for our
Hence
future.
all the stairs and the bricks.
Oh yeah, and even the way they promote the university, right, on their advertising and stuff like that, it's pretty clear,
Yep.
right, that it was not built for us in our future. So thinking about that, I had a lot of um disappointment and frustration, to say the least, about, college and the way that college was not very accessible, right? The way that, as I said, your disability identity um is often either overlooked or it's not really considered important, or kind of, as you said, an afterthought for the university to consider when thinking about your university experience, or let alone educational experience. And so what I realized is, being frustrated and like, having, of course, being frustrated and being um, you know, disappointed by these expectations is something that we should validate, but it's also what I realize is it's not it doesn't actually lead to any transformative, like tangible change.
Yeah.
So, it's really through like the proactive conversations with people, where you're compassionate to them and they're able to reciprocate, right? Your like that you're able to get anything done. And these outcomes, it takes a long time sometimes. And, it took my whole and you like our whole university experience to kind of, figure quote unquote figure it out and
Yeah.
actually have a fulfilling experience. But I think that a big part of it is being able and committed as, an institution, right? Or as a community to really confront those truths, which is, this is not, maybe this is not accessible, or maybe there's a way that this can be done differently, that our community, as I said, asset wise and diversity wise could bring to to um the table, which I often I think that you know, there were many instances in my advocacy career where I just wanted to act on these emotions, right? When I'm, angry, you saw at UCLA the way that the students were very angry and they have goals and they want to accomplish them, right,
Yeah.
for the future of the university, to say the very least. But I felt like, um, again, that doesn't really lead anywhere. So what I had to learn is to power my rage into mentoring others so that we could work collectively towards something more um more visible, right? And what
Yeah.
I mean by that is you could actually see something happening rather than you just running into a wall, right? Um
Definitely.
so yeah, that was a big part of it. The second thing I would suggest is, as I said, our um diversity is immense. It's, you know, and you have your positionality as an individual within that, but being mindful of that will keep the like advocacy going for yourself and for others. We all have different ways of obviously that, not disabled people, they consider diversity, right? Which is race, everything else, right? But on top of that, and within our own community, disabled community, we have a lot of diversity in addition to that. So,
Right.
right, how we communicate, how we move, how we think, how we,
Yeah.
right, like problem solve and think about how, think about the 504 sit-ins and, how, there were all these different instances where different people with different skills and different assets, came together. And it's through learning from each other, really. Um,
Yeah.
and that's what I've learned through this whole experience is by learning from other people and educating myself about the diversity of our community. I know, right, that although I'm in a privileged position, right, to maybe be in a leadership role because not many disabled people are, right,
Right.
that you realize that, yeah, you can't represent everybody, but you still have to embrace that diversity, acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And third, I would say, lastly, is to remember that progress is slow.
Rome wasn't built
That,
in a day.
Oh yeah.
yeah, I think that Judy Human, she actually, before she passed away, she would always talk about how um, like although we want the changes now and we know what they are, they're gonna take so much time.
Yeah.
And even for us at the university and not even in school, just overall, I think, within our lifetimes, in Gen Z and everything, despite all these technological innovations and everything else, right? Change is slow, right?
Yeah.
And still very, right? And even the way that, as you mentioned earlier, like even the way that people think that, you know, I don't know, disabled people like are um, not able to find employment and all this other stuff. There's still a lot of attitudinal barriers, and the ADA, although it was a great achievement for its time, it's also it's pretty clear, right, that people, um, at least the non-disabled majority of people, right, and even us, have a long way to go in terms of educating ourselves and, as I said, just learning from disabled people.
Well, hello there. This is your handsome and humble and hammy host. I really hope you enjoyed this general discussion on advocacy as much as I did. Tune in next week for the back half of our discussion as we get a little bit more specific, sharing our more personal stories related to advocacy and why it is so important. As always, if you liked what we had to say today, please leave us a rating, a nice little review on Apple Podcasts, comment on our YouTube channel, and be sure to share with your friends and family. If you're not already, be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at The Disability Myth. As always, peace and love, and may the force be with you.